shot her. She's the one who shot her. Restraining order, but she shot her.
The deadly happened this morning right here along Cermak near State after loved ones of the victim say she had just dropped her son at school.
Imagine dropping your child off at school, and within moments, your life is ripped apart in broad daylight. That's exactly what happened to Romeca Meek in Chicago's South Loop. Who was really behind the her child's father, partner, or something far darker? Conflicting witnesses, viral videos, restraining orders, and shocking contradictions make this case a puzzle that no one can fully untangle, yet. Stay with us, because the truth behind Romeca's tragic death will shock you, and you won't believe what the authorities let happen next. If there's one story tangled with shocking twists, it's the heartbreaking case of Romeca Meek. Her life came to a tragic end in a confrontation tied to her child's father, Carlos Loss, and his girlfriend, Cordia Johnson, better known as Holly. Picture this: you've just dropped your little boy off at school, when suddenly the father's other partner appears, and that moment turns fatal. That's exactly what happened to Romeca. After leaving the school in Chicago's South Loop, she was pulled into a fight with another woman. In a horrifying turn, while locked in a headhold by her child's father, the woman fired at her from close range, right there, in public. When news of the case first broke, whispers spread that Romeca's child's father had actually ordered the attack. Reports claimed he'd shown aggression toward her long before, and that she'd even filed a restraining order against him. That was the early story. But then, things shifted. The new version suggested that Holly, along with the baby's father, had dropped the child off at school. Romeca supposedly arrived later to deliver lunch and became the aggressor. According to this account, Holly acted in self-defense. Shockingly, Holly was released from custody soon after her arrest, and authorities allegedly closed the case. But the drama didn't stop there. Many in the community are convinced something deeper is being hidden. Some argue that Holly must have had powerful evidence, like a protection order against Romeca, along with multiple videos showing Romeca threatening or harassing her. Those who've seen the clips describe Romeca as aggressive and relentless toward baby mama number 2. On the other hand, skeptics point out strange details, like reports that Holly and the child's father showed up at the school in separate cars. Witnesses question, if they were together, why arrive individually? The more you dig, the more twisted the story becomes. Could this whole tragedy have been staged to look like self-defense? The twists in this story just don't seem to end. Here's what was originally reported. Authorities said Romeca had just finished dropping her son off at school in Chicago's South Loop when she crossed paths with Holly, the other mother connected to her child's father. A heated argument broke out, and within moments, it escalated into a violent struggle. Witnesses claim that during the fight, Holly drew a firearm and shot Romeca at point-blank range, right in the face, in broad daylight. Instead of de-escalating, Romeca's child's father allegedly appeared and only added fuel to the fire. The scene turned into chaos. Emergency responders rushed Romeca to Struger Hospital, but the damage was too severe. She was pronounced dead, leaving behind a young son and a devastated family now begging for justice. Loved ones, neighbors, and friends have gathered for vigils, remembering Romeca as a devoted mother whose world revolved around her child. She had been studying to become a nurse, balancing her education and motherhood with determination. To those who knew her, she wasn't just a victim. She was a loving parent and a woman with dreams. But in the blink of an eye, her son lost the most important person in his life, his mom. On the very morning before her tragic death, Romeca tucked a handwritten note into her son's lunchbox, a note that later went viral after being shared on her social media. In it, she described Monday as a fresh start, encouraging her little boy with heartfelt words. You can start off strong. Always stay true to yourself. You're the coolest, smartest, and funniest kid I know. I love you so much, and you make me proud every single day. Have a great day. Love, Mommy. To many, that note felt like both a blessing and a haunting reminder of all that was lost. Speculation quickly spread that the confrontation wasn't random at all, that it was premeditated. Some claimed Holly's jealousy had boiled over, fueled by the belief that Carlos was still hung up on his first child's mother. And why wouldn't he be? Romeca was described as stunning, well put together, and a devoted mom who had managed to walk away from his chaos. Reports suggest Romeca had endured severe narcissistic abuse at the hands of Carlos, but she had been focused on building a happy, independent life away from him. Her death, however, has now become more than just a personal tragedy. It's a wake-up call. An online petition circulating in her memory describes her story as a painful reminder of the domestic violence crisis that too often hides behind closed doors. The petition urges the community and its leaders to act boldly, to confront domestic abuse head-on, to strengthen prevention efforts, and to ensure no other family suffers a similar fate. It calls on law enforcement and government officials to fully investigate Romeca's case, deliver swift justice, and restore public trust in the safety of schools and neighborhoods. Beyond justice, advocates are pushing for more investment in domestic violence awareness programs, resources for survivors, and safe spaces for those in need, because Romeca's story has become more than just a tragedy, it's a rallying cry for change. The petition calling for justice ended with a powerful reminder: no one should ever have to live in fear inside their own home, and no child should lose a parent to violence. But even after that plea, the outrage only grew louder. Police initially confirmed that the woman accused of pulling the trigger had been taken into custody. This arrest initially gave some sense of hope to Romeca Meek's grieving family and community, who had been calling for swift justice. It seemed, at least on the surface, that the authorities were taking the matter seriously and that steps were being taken to ensure accountability for the tragic death of a devoted mother. Yet, just a few days later, the situation took a shocking turn. Holly, also known as Quidacia, the second mother involved in the incident, was suddenly released without any charges being filed. This abrupt release sent shockwaves through the community, leaving many to question the effectiveness of law enforcement and the transparency of the investigation. Witnesses who had been present during the fatal confrontation insisted that they had seen everything unfold clearly, and according to their accounts, there was little doubt about Holly's involvement in the shooting. Many of these eyewitnesses felt that justice had been denied, and social media erupted with outrage as people shared their versions of the events and demanded answers. Adding more fuel to the fire, a video began circulating online that captured Holly herself making a bold declaration: she was licensed to carry a firearm. In the clip, her tone was calm but assertive, almost as if she were asserting her right to defend herself, while the public couldn't help but question the timing and context of her statement. The video quickly went viral, being shared thousands of times across platforms, sparking debate about whether the shooting had truly been an act of self-defense or something more premeditated. Meanwhile, witnesses continued to provide testimony that painted a complex and troubling picture of what had occurred moments before the deadly shot was fired. Several claimed that Carlos, the child's father, had Romeca locked in a headlock just prior to the shooting, a detail that added another layer of confusion and suspicion. If this account is accurate, it challenges the narrative that Romeca was the aggressor, as some reports had suggested. Instead, it raises questions about Carlos' role in escalating the situation, and whether he had contributed to creating the conditions that led to Romeca's death. To complicate matters even further, other bystanders reportedly attempted to intervene in the chaotic scene. One witness could be heard pleading with police officers to arrest Holly immediately, alleging that she had placed the firearm in her car after the incident. The claim suggested a level of forethought or at least consciousness of wrongdoing, which contradicted the narrative that this was a sudden act of self-defense. These conflicting accounts have made it nearly impossible to discern the truth, leaving the public, family, and legal authorities struggling to piece together a coherent sequence of events. The rapid release of Holly, combined with these videos and eyewitness reports, has fueled widespread speculation that the case may be far more complicated than originally presented. Some believe that authorities may have lacked sufficient evidence to hold her, while others argue that this points to systemic failures in how domestic disputes and violent incidents are handled, particularly when multiple parties with conflicting stories are involved. In either scenario, the outcome has left Romeca's family devastated and the community frustrated, as many fear that justice has not yet been served. Ultimately, these events underscore the confusion and contradictions surrounding the case. Between the eyewitness reports, viral video clips, and the legal decisions made in the aftermath, it has become nearly impossible for observers to know what transpired that day. What is clear, however, is that a mother has lost her life, a young child has lost his parent, and questions about accountability and justice remain painfully unresolved. The public, for now, is left with fragments of information, a cascade of conflicting narratives, and the haunting reminder of how quickly life can be changed in moments of violence. At first glance, the idea that Holly would openly attack Romeca at her child's school seemed unbelievable. But those close to the situation offered another version of events, one that may explain why Holly isn't facing charges. According to sources, she hadn't traveled in from Wisconsin that morning. Instead, she had already been at Carlos's home, and the two of them left together to drop off his child at school. According to reports, Romeca had returned to her son's school that morning to drop off his lunch. That's when she allegedly ran into Sadeja, and the two became embroiled in a heated altercation. At the time, Sadeja reportedly had an active protection order against Romeca, and some sources claim Romeca was the aggressor. In this version, Sadeja only fought back in self-defense. But here's where the story starts to unravel. Other witnesses tell a very different tale. They claim both Sadeja and Carlos, the child's father, showed up to the school in separate cars, a detail that has sparked endless speculation online. If they were already together, why arrive separately? Was it coincidence, or was it intentional? Could it have been part of a larger plan to stage the incident and disguise it as self-defense? Theories like these have only intensified the controversy. Meanwhile, Romeca's grieving family wants none of the speculation, they just want justice. At her memorial, her mother revealed that Romeca's young son has been left so devastated he hasn't spoken to anyone. For them, this isn't about rumors or online debates, it's about accountability. Still, the contradictions are hard to ignore. Witness testimonies don't match. The existence of a protection order adds another layer of confusion. And viral videos continue to stir emotions on both sides. Which version is true? Was Romeca truly the aggressor that day, or was she the victim of a carefully orchestrated setup? Was this confrontation truly a moment of fear and reaction, or the result of tensions that had been simmering for far too long? That's where the darkest speculation begins. With witnesses pointing out that Carlos and Quidacia arrived in separate cars, questions have only grown louder. Could this have been planned? Did Carlos himself play a larger role, perhaps even orchestrating the entire ordeal and disguising it as self-defense? At this point, there are countless theories surrounding the death of Romeca Meek, but very few solid answers. The case has twisted and turned in so many directions that separating fact from speculation has become increasingly difficult. Was this simply a heated argument that spiraled out of control in the worst possible way, or was it something far more sinister, a carefully calculated setup designed to look like self-defense? And if authorities insist the case is closed, is it really closed, or has the full truth yet to be uncovered? For now, the only certainty is the devastating loss of Romeca Meek, a young mother whose life was cut short in front of her child's school. Her story has left behind a community in shock, a family in mourning, and a little boy who will grow up without his mother by his side. Romeca was remembered by those who loved her as a devoted mother, a woman who worked hard to build a better future for her child. Reports suggest she was studying to become a nurse, balancing her education and responsibilities as a parent. Friends and neighbors describe her as vibrant, stylish, and determined to move forward in life, even after enduring a turbulent relationship with Carlos, the father of her child. In the days following her death, vigils were held where candles flickered, tears fell, and demands for justice echoed through the streets. But justice, at least for now, seems tangled in contradictions. On one hand, some reports claim Romeca was the aggressor in the confrontation with Quidacia, the second mother tied to Carlos. Witnesses in that version of events say Romeca confronted her, and the fight escalated until Quidacia struck back in self-defense. Adding fuel to that narrative, there were claims that Quidacia had an active protection order against Romeca, and videos allegedly showed Romeca making threats or behaving aggressively toward her in the past. On the other hand, a different set of witnesses tell an entirely different story. They insist that Romeca wasn't the one who initiated the altercation. They claim that Carlos held her in a headlock during the fight and that Quidacia pulled out a firearm and shot Romeca at close range. According to these accounts, Holly, as Quidacia is also known, didn't simply react out of fear. She executed a violent act in broad daylight. To make matters more suspicious, witnesses also noted that both Carlos and Quidacia arrived at the school in separate cars. If they were living together, why would they drive individually? For many, that detail was enough to spark theories of a premeditated attack, potentially orchestrated to look like self-defense. And so, the contradictions pile up. On one side, we have official records pointing to restraining orders and past conflicts, suggesting that Romeca had a history of tension with the second baby mama. On the other, we have eyewitnesses alleging that the confrontation was anything but mutual, that Romeca was restrained by Carlos and shot while defenseless. These conflicting accounts make it nearly impossible for the public to feel any sense of closure. The release of Quidacia from custody only deepened suspicions. If the case was so clear-cut, why was she released so quickly? Authorities maintained that they did not have enough to hold her, but critics argue that this decision points to a larger problem: bias, negligence, or even corruption in the handling of cases involving domestic violence. For Romeca's family, the release felt like a second tragedy, as though her life had been taken and then dismissed without true accountability. What makes this case even more haunting is the note Romeca left for her son that morning, tucked inside his lunchbox. In it, she told him that Mondays were a fresh start, encouraged him to always remain true to himself, and reminded him that he was the smartest, funniest, and coolest kid she knew. She ended the note with a heartfelt, "Mommy loves you." The message went viral online, breaking hearts across social media. Because within hours of writing those words, her life was cut short. The note now serves as both a reminder of her love for her son and a symbol of how abruptly that bond was severed. Beyond the personal tragedy lies a broader issue: domestic violence and the cycles of abuse that often escalate behind closed doors. Advocates have used Romeca's case as a rallying cry, urging leaders and communities to take stronger action against domestic violence. An online petition calls for thorough investigation, greater accountability, and increased funding for prevention and survivor support. It highlights how cases like this one expose the cracks in a system that often fails to protect women, particularly those caught in toxic or abusive relationships. The community response has been powerful but divided. Some stand firmly with Romeca, convinced she was the victim of a setup. Others argue that the protection order and alleged videos suggest she may have played a role in escalating the conflict. What both sides agree on, however, is that the truth has yet to fully emerge. Witnesses contradict each other, evidence remains unclear, and the narrative continues to shift depending on the source. For Romeca's family, none of the speculation matters as much as the simple fact that a son has lost his mother. Her own mother spoke at a memorial, saying the child has been left devastated and unable to speak to anyone. The family has made it clear, regardless of the rumors, someone must be held accountable. Until more evidence comes to light, the case remains clouded in uncertainty. Was it truly a tragic fight that spiraled out of control, or was it something much darker, an orchestrated setup carefully staged to resemble self-defense? Has justice really been served, or has the system turned its back on yet another victim of domestic violence? For now, all the public can do is continue to demand answers, examine the contradictions, and press for the truth. Because at the heart of all the noise, speculation, and theories lies a devastating reality. A child is without his mother, a family is left broken, and a community is crying out for justice that has yet to come.